let's say, for example, you've got a project where you're dealing with multiple assets and you want those assets recorded, the data recorded off those assets, but also shown on a map. A good way of using that is in conjunction with a potential tool around asset planning. Now, we do have a tool within the application called the asset planning tool. And so essentially this is a place, at least within this application, I'm sure other applications have something very similar, where you can import in lists of assets. And so I'm using the railroad bridge as an example, this project, the San Lorenzo project where you saw, let's just go back to it real quick so I can show this to you again. We're talking about this specific image, the second image here on my list, where it's showing the physical location of items and their span information. And so this is, obviously geolocation information that can be captured in the field, recorded in a project management information system, or recorded and imported in later. It's really up to, how they want to do it. But essentially from this, how do you collect and store multiple points of data for a physical, piece of equipment or some sort of element within a project that's outside the scope of a physical coordinate for, maybe a vertical construction, horizontal essentially. And so let's just take a look here under asset planning. So this element here is the ability to create lists of assets and share those assets with individual projects. So you can see here, these are the San Lorenzo project assets. And I've actually loaded in those spans right here under this header. So this is the span 1 through X that I had loaded into the mapping software. And so again, those assets, once they're shared within, this, say for example, this particular project, they'll be accessible to the project team under the asset planning area in this particular project itself. And let's just narrow this down because I have multiple assets within this example project. And essentially it's the ability for me to search for those different spans. And the data associated with the spans themselves are going to be conditional based off of what types of data in this particular project management information system that, the owner wants to track. And let's just take a quick look here, an example of, the main information about this asset, including, quantities. You can even record the original cost of that item to save as part of this. Really, one of the main reasons this particular tool was invented was that I used to go to shows and talk to facilities managers about the closeout process that they have. And a lot of those facilities managers were giving us stories about the inconsistency in the data that they were getting from the construction team at project closeout. And so they would be getting it in paper, or they'd be getting it in disjointed spreadsheets, or they'd be getting it in, a multitude of different ways. So this tool is actually provided to allow at the project's execution for the people collaborating on the project to actually enter data about those projects and about the assets that live within those projects. And it's, whatever types of assets that you want to put in. And storing additional, even custom information about that, so that at the closeout, essentially what can happen is the facilities team can export out this information, or integrate, obviously, but export this information out and provide that to that work order management software at the closeout of the project. And so, and even during the execution phase, one of the things that's also important to recognize is if they're recording asset information from the field, here's an example of at least my cell phone here being displayed on this page. I remember that San Lorenzo project. And so there's a multitude of different things that, people can do within the field for, whether it's retrieving or reviewing documents or punching a project, et cetera. But we're talking about the actual asset planning tool that I'm showing you here on the browser. And so you'll notice here, this is the list of assets. And again, if I want to kind of isolate down the ones that I'm looking for, we go into this first span that I showed. And essentially here is the basic information about that span. The different tabs that you're looking at on the browser in this example is another view, so additional information. And then the geolocation information that we're displaying here essentially is essentially, again, recorded as part of that span information. So if we go back into the span, look at that span 1, you can see one of the install removal dates columns I had is the latitude and longitude coordinates that have been recorded for this particular span. So if we go back and look at that map from the project dashboard in this example, and we pull up the larger view of that map, essentially what we're looking at here is, again, those little data points. And you'll notice this is a different type of map than the program map. And some of these types of mapping softwares have different kind of base maps that you can use to record information. So in this example, let's just take a look at this first span. It's essentially showing me project attributes and then the information about that particular asset. And so this is that use case to show those different assets, whether you're plugging these assets in and setting up a hyperlink on this to another site or something else, or storing it with the project indefinitely. It's a useful way to be able to interact with that data. Now,
yeah, I think.
Sorry,
oh, so sorry. I think I've heard from my fair share of people on the facility side at how long and drawn out that turnover process can be, because there's data missing. They're having to go back and capture that data that could have been captured in the first place. So having something to be able to collaborate on and have all your data in one place is incredibly beneficial.